Welcome to another episode of On the Issues with Alon Ben-Meir. Today's guest is Ziad AbuZayyad, co-founder and editor of Palestine-Israel Journal, a former Palestinian Authority minister, former chair of Law and Constitution in the Palestinian Parliament, and a negotiator in the post-Oslo Accords Cairo negotiations, which led to the creation of the Palestinian Authority. In this episode, Alon and Ziad discuss the war on Gaza and its devastating impacts, the current situation in the West Bank and the interconnectedness of the two scenarios in the West Bank and Gaza, and the various prospects of moving forward toward a solution that respects Palestinian and Israeli sovereignties and how to address those challenges.
Good morning, Mr. Ziad. I want to thank you so much again for taking the time this morning to speak with me about the ever more deteriorating situation for the Palestinian, both, of course, in the West Bank as in Gaza after two horrific war that has inflicted so much destruction and so much death and injured among the Palestinians, specifically so many tens of thousands of women and children. So this is a tragedy, the likes of which we have not seen since the World War II, for that matter. So my question to you is today, living there and seeing this on a day-to-day basis, how do you assess it? What do you see is taking place now? From your perspective, how things are unfolding as you are reviewing them, basically day in and day out yourself?
Well, to be honest and frank with you, when this war against Gaza started, I was following the news. I wanted to see what's happening, but soon we started to see horrible things, to see dead people, dead children, to see scenes which you cannot bear looking at them. So I started to try to avoid seeing the horrible things, the human suffering which is taking place. As you said, the number which had been counted, it's almost 70,000 people killed. Between these 70,000 people, more than 18,000 children, including infants who with the age of days or weeks. And there are other thousands of people under the rubble. Nobody knows their number. Besides now, in winter, there is no shelter. Imagine about 2 million people are living under the sky while it's in the mud, under the rain, in the cold, in the storm. And they shout and they cry and nobody listens to them. I believe that this war and these crimes and this genocide against our people in Gaza would not have taken place without the complicity of the United States on one hand and several European governments on the other hand. Because where is the human conscience? Where is the international law? Where is the humanitarian law? How they are watching what's happening now with the social media, with the very advanced kinds of communication and information. There is nothing to hide. People see everything, in spite of the fact that from the beginning of the war, Israel did not allow any foreign journalists to go to Gaza Strip. And in spite of the fact that until now, about 250 journalists, Palestinian journalists, were killed in Gaza, yet the international media is aware of what's happening and is carrying reports by sound and photo about what's happening. And we ask why? And what is the so-called international community, international legitimacy, international law? And the simple question is the United States. Had the United States wanted to stop these massacres, they would have stopped it. From Biden to Trump, they are following the same school, the same behavior. And what is dictating things now in Gaza is the racist, fanatic right wing in Israel. Because, as you know, Netanyahu cares only about his own survival and his coalition survival. And he is ruled by Smotrich and Ben-Meir. And these people, they have a very clear ideology, which is ideology of Meir Kahana. And unfortunately, the United States is silent. And they are giving the green light for all the time to Netanyahu to do what he's doing. Now you ask me, where are we going from here?
Let me first stop before we go there. Thank you so much first for the. I could not agree with you more. I couldn't possibly agree with you more. As you probably know, I have been saying much of the same thing, and by the point specifically that you made about the United States and Netanyahu is absolutely on target because, again, from the start of the war, when the Biden was the president, he could have done. He went to Israel specifically when the attack of Hamas that killed roughly 1,200 Israelis. He flew to Israel to express his sympathy and his support, but he did not go to Israel after still 1 year when the war was raging, killing tens of thousands of Palestinians. He not only did not go to express any sympathy, but he continued to supply Israel, Netanyahu government, with all the weapons they needed, including these 2,000-pound bombs, basically leveling most of Gaza. And of course, Netanyahu is even more so complicit, very complicit. I called it plainly. Netanyahu is complicit to the genocide that has taken place in Gaza. I said that here, and I will keep saying it. And so yeah, what you have said is it's so much to the point. And of course, you also mentioned the European community. They should be ashamed of themselves, specifically the major powers, Germany, France, and Britain. All they did now, pay lip service after this tragedy. They recognize a Palestinian state. And so what? And what happened now? Before that, 142 countries recognized the Palestinian state. Well, the war took place, and Israel continued to expand the settlement. So what does it mean? It means absolutely nothing. It's a symbolic gesture. No one has taken action on the ground. None of these power, or none of them use their influence on Israel to stop it from doing what it's doing. So this is as if it were international conspiracy to do whatever it takes to dehumanize the Palestinians, as having not been dehumanizing them for so many decades, this probably would not happen. But the Palestinians are not considered human. So it's okay. All of these things that happen, it's okay. And I just want to ask you this question, having seen all of this horrific thing as you described, before we go, where are we going to go from here? What is the current situation? Because the current situation is not getting any better. How do you assess that from your perspective, Mr. Ziad?
Well, the current situation, let's always remember that the West Bank and Gaza Strip are an integral part. The integrity of the West Bank and Gaza Strip should not be ignored or denied, as what the American administration is doing so far. They did not mention the West Bank, did not mention East Jerusalem, did not even mention the Palestinian Authority or the PLO, and they focus only about Gaza and about a business aspect of Gaza and not the political aspect of the future of Gaza. In the West Bank, now there is a daily war carried by the fanatic Jewish settlers under the protection of the Israeli army and the border police and the Israeli police against the unarmed Palestinian farmers and villagers. They just attack the houses, burn farm, take their sheep, take their herds, burn their belongings, burn their cars. This is becoming a normal action, a daily action, every night, every evening, and in different parts of the West Bank, not in one specific part. And even we had the chief of staff of the Israeli army saying that Israel is a state of law and they cannot tolerate the continuity of these actions of the settlers against the Palestinians, but we did not see any action. It's just a lip service. We heard the same thing from the Israeli president, Mr. Herzog. We heard that even from some other officials, but they are talking to the outside world. They want to give the impression to the outside world that they are not endorsing the terror which is practiced by the Jewish settlers in the West Bank against the Palestinians. Imagine that thousands of olive trees are uprooted, are cut down, or burnt. And some of these olive trees, they are hundreds of years old, 400, 500 years old from the days of the Romans. And they go and just either cut them or burn them. And so in many cases, now this is the time for the farmers to collect the harvest of olive. They wait, the farmers start from the early morning collecting the fruit of the olives. And towards the end of the day, they just come to these farmers, they shoot in the air, they attack them with sticks, and they take all the olives which these poor people had collected all the day. And they take it and they go away. And the families complain to the police, to the army, nothing is done. Nothing is done. This is the Jewish terror and the occupied territory is something unbelievable. It had never been this way since 1967. Now, in Gaza Strip, it's a different kind of tragedy. I said in the beginning of my speaking that there is an integrity between the West Bank and Gaza Strip. And we were always saying that if you mention the West Bank, you must mention Gaza Strip. Now, they are, on one hand, ignoring and denying the integrity of Gaza Strip with the West Bank. And at the same time, they're trying to divide the Gaza Strip and to focus on 1/3 of Gaza Strip, which is not occupied by the Israelis. Israelis now are controlling most of Gaza Strip, which they call it the yellow line. And they want to establish a fact that the border of Israel is not the borders of 1948. It is the new borders of now, of Trump plan. And they want to gather the 2+ million Palestinians in the very small strip where they push them outside the yellow line in less than 40% of Gaza Strip, or about 40% of Gaza Strip. And they want them to live without shelter, without food, without medicine, without health care, without any privacy for the women or the children. And they practice a pressure on them to force them to leave. And then they say, if they leave, they say they voluntarily leave. They put them in very unhuman, intolerable conditions. And then if they give them a chance to go out to save their lives and to save their children, they say, well, we did not make ethnic cleansing. We did not expel them. They left by their own decision, which is absolutely not true. So what we say now, that the focus should be about
before we go into that, I just want to so because you spoke two things, about the West Bank, and now you shifted to Gaza, which is of course I see it, you see it the same way. The tragedy is interconnected. What's happening in the West Bank is specifically, in my view, it's just as tragic as you said it, because the plan there, Israeli so-called attachment to that part of Palestine, it's even greater than its attachment to Gaza. And we have to keep that in mind. So the idea behind what's happening in the West Bank, from my perspective, is not merely just harassing, taking the harvest of olives, killing Palestinians, pushing them out slowly. This is, in my view, it's a grand design. As I see it, it's a grand design to slowly make it impossible for the Palestinians to live in the West Bank. Make it very, very difficult. What I've been calling it is creeping annexation, acre by acre, meter by meter, threatening, and now using the settlers as the tool. So they cannot, they claim, we are not doing this. We are actually trying to, once in a while, they catch a couple of settlers and take them to trial because for killing a Palestinian for showing, like it's just a show. When in fact, this government in particular, in my view, is as a clear design. And they said clearly, the West Bank is part and parcel of a greater Israel. Smotrich said that. Ben-Meir said that. They are in the government. Smotrich is in charge of the West Bank. The settlements continue to grow. And the harassment of the Palestinians, the night raids, the uprooting of trees, destroying grazing land, is taking place, like you said, day in and day out. So this is a part of a greater design to annex eventually, and they said so. In fact, there was a bill in the Knesset, as you probably, I'm sure you know, calling for the annexation of the West Bank. So, and here again, the Trump administration did not say one word yet not one word about stopping what Israel is doing in Gaza. The whole world is still focusing on I mean, in the West Bank, but the whole world now is focusing, I'm saying, paying more attention to what's going on in Gaza than what's happening in the West Bank, which is exactly what Israel is doing. This is serving Israeli.
I agree with every word you said.
Yes.
And I want to add that since the formation of the current Israeli government, Netanyahu appointed Smotrich as the Minister of Finance.
Yes.
And Smotrich insisted that in addition to his position as a Minister of Finance, he wants to be responsible for the so-called civil administration in the West Bank.
Exactly.
And the COGAT office, the Office of the Military Coordinator for the West Bank, which means, in other words, that Smotrich is now the Prime Minister and the Governor of the West Bank.
Exactly.
Smotrich. And he is the Governor of the West Bank, and he is at the same time, he has the treasury, he has the money. And therefore, he is investing hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of shekels. He is investing in expanding the Jewish settlements and legalizing the so-called outposts and converting them to become settlements, in expropriating thousands of dunams from the Palestinian property and giving them to the settlements. And on his side, there is also Ben-Meir, who is in charge of the police. So you have Smotrich, he's in charge of the civil administration, or the so-called civil administration, because it is military, and Ben-Meir is in charge of the police. Exactly. And the one is called civil administration, they have an officer in charge of every aspect of life. They have an officer for health, an officer for planning, an officer for water, an officer for education, and these officers, all of them are coming from the settlers. They are
Yes.
Jewish settlers. So there is a conflict of interest between these officers who are running the affairs of the Palestinians and the Palestinians. And therefore, they devote all their energy, all their efforts, all their authorities in order to serve the settlements and the settlers and to make the life of the Palestinians as a hell. Imagine that I live in Azariah. Azariah is my house is far 100 meters from the separation wall. And since the beginning of the war, I'm not allowed to go to East Jerusalem. I'm not allowed to go to my office in East Jerusalem. I'm not allowed to have a treatment, health treatment in East Jerusalem. And this is not only me, it's applied for every Palestinian in the West Bank. So the situation in the West Bank, it's on the verge of explosion because we have nowhere to go and we will not go anywhere, even if there was a chance to go. And
So
we
I just want to ask you, in this context, when you say on the verge of explosion, I have been advocating, it's the time, for the Palestinian even to rise. What do you think, and I want to go back to Gaza a little later, what do you think is the prospect? I mean, the situation has reached a point of simply intolerable anymore. But the Israeli intelligence is all over the West Bank. They pretty much know what's going on just about every corner of the West Bank. Do you think there's any prospect, when you say they're on the verge of explosion, any prospect for any kind of organized movement within the West Bank, within the Palestinian community, to say enough is enough? And which kind of form that might take? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, you mentioned the Israeli intelligence. And what is being done now in the West Bank, it is by the Israeli politicians. It's against the recommendations and the suggestions and the reports of the Israeli intelligence. And this had been even before the October 7 attack. And even today, I was reading a report that the head of the Shabak at that time called Ben-Meir in the beginning of October, before the October attack, and told Ben-Meir that what he is doing in the Dome of the Rock in Al-Haram al-Sharif is inciting the Palestinians, is pushing the Palestinians toward violence, and he should refrain from what he is doing. But nobody listened to the security people. They listened to their politicians, and their politicians, as I said earlier, they are now the ultra right-wing people, whether nationalists or religious. And they don't care about Palestinians, they don't care about law. They even, in some cases, they even attack Israeli soldiers.
Yeah. So what we're looking at, the Israeli government is actually complicit to what's going on in the West Bank.
Exactly.
They're using the settlers to do their dirty work. The United States is doing absolutely nothing, as a matter of fact, by being complicit also to what's happening to them. And then you have the Israeli so-called opposition. And the opposition, all they do is talk, and there is nothing. I have said that time and again, in Israel itself, I mean, that's the fourth problem. So you have the Palestinians who are incapable. They cannot, because the Israeli knows exactly. They know, the intelligence know exactly what's going on in the West Bank. It's preventing the Palestinian from undertaking what I call an uprising. What is the prospect of an uprising? Let me just reiterate that, because I wanted to make one point. So you have the Palestinian basically in chains. They cannot undertake significant uprising against the Israelis. And even if they did, it would be crushed, most likely. You have the United States basically is complicit to what's going on. The European community is quite silent. The government is continuing to do its dirty work through through the settlers. And then there is hardly any opposition with Israel itself. that is making noise about it. Stop, enough is enough. We can no longer take it. And the fifth element, the Israeli public. I have yet to see the Israeli public going out in the street as they go, been demonstrating for 2 years about the hostages, hundreds of thousands of them. Not a single demonstration has taken place yet in any significant way to say enough is enough. We need a solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So when I look at this whole circle, where is the help is going to come to end this horrific conflict? Because everyone around them, there's no one who's advocating to say we can. Where do we go from here? I mentioned this to you because when you have that kind of encirclement that nobody really cares or incapable of doing anything to change the dynamics of the conflict, how do you attain breakthrough? How do you see where this is going to go? What's going to happen next?
To answer your question, please allow me first to answer your first question, which I did not answer
Please.
it,
Yes.
about the Palestinians in the West Bank and if there is any movement or any kind of thinking how to change the situation. The Palestinians in the West Bank are subject to oppression from the Israeli security and from the Palestinian security.
Yes.
I'm sorry to say that.
No, I know that. I'm aware of
the
that.
Palestinian security is more harsh than the Israeli.
They're cooperating with Israel, as a matter of fact.
And no, they want to prove to the Americans and to the Europeans and to the international community that they are committed to peace and they are ready to do their job and to prevent any violence from the Palestinians against the Israelis.
Yeah, but this is really, basically when they want to demonstrate that, but in fact they are allowing Israel to continue its mischief day in and day out. Please continue.
Yes, this is the outcome of the process.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, their intention is not leading to the outcome which they want, to the conclusion which they want. They want to show that they are in favor of peace, that they are committed to peace, they are committed to a political solution, they are against violence, they're against any attacks against the Israelis, and therefore they arrest Palestinians and they oppress Palestinians, and they prevent Palestinians to go and demonstrate in the streets or even do any passive resistance against the occupation, saying that if they go and do passive resistance, the Israelis will kill them, but nobody cares about them. The Israelis don't care about them, the Americans don't care about them, the international community don't care about them, and they are dancing in the darkness.
Right.
Nobody sees them.
Right.
At the same time, we have the Israeli security and the Israeli army. And now, since the beginning of October war, the Israeli soldiers have a very, very easy finger on the trigger. And the instructions of firing are now very loose, very, very open, that you can kill anyone and say, well, he tried to attack me. He refused to stop. I asked him to stop. He tried to run away. And every day, there are children. Yesterday, children 14 years old, they are shot dead. Why? They throw a stone. They shouted against a settler or against an army. So, this kind of terrorizing the Palestinian society, for the moment, for the time being, people are afraid. But there will come a point that they will break fear. And they will not care anymore about what their life means. And they will not care about what the Palestinian security or the Israeli security will do to them. It's a matter of time.
But then even this, it could be spontaneous, as many times it happened. Could be spontaneous, that is no
yes,
planning.
as happened in 87.
Yeah,
That's
no
what
planning.
happened at
It's
the
gonna
center of
by
the
itself
Palestinian Parliament.
emerge. That is a possibility, obviously. But I just want to also to address
Yeah,
the
and
other
I want to
point.
answer your second
Continue,
question.
continue, because I want to the 4 points I mentioned here. So you
Yeah, yeah.
responded to the first one.
You spoke about
Go
the
ahead.
Israeli society.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
lived with this occupation from 1967.
Yes.
The Israelis, whom I was very active in dialogue with Israelis from the early 70s. And I learned Hebrew, and my Hebrew is much better than my English, as you may know.
I see. I know that.
The Israelis, which we met in the 70s and the 80s, and even in the 90s, are not the same Israelis which we deal with them now. The Israeli society as a whole is shifting towards the right wing.
Yes.
And there is a machine of propaganda by the Israeli government and by different Israeli organizations to continue brainwashing the Israeli society
Yes.
and promoting hatred and suspicion and fear within the Israelis to make them all the time afraid from the Palestinians and hate the Palestinians and not speak about peace with the Palestinians.
Right.
During the last 5 or 6 times of elections in Israel, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has never been on the election campaign of any candidate.
That's right.
That's always Netanyahu, not Netanyahu. This is the point. You spoke about the Israeli opposition. The Israeli opposition, they don't speak about resolving the conflict. They try to compete with Netanyahu on the issues of security,
Yes.
so that to protect their own legitimacy within a society which is going all the time towards the right wing and about revenge from the Palestinians. And they speak about the corruption of Netanyahu. So I think we are in a situation where there is no hope of having something from inside Israel to change the direction of the Israeli politics.
I agree with that.
There must be an outside element which influence the Israelis, which influence the interests of the Israelis and make them change the direction. Otherwise, we are stuck in this situation, and things are getting worse all the time.
I absolutely, fully agree with the assessment. So basically, this is going to leave us from Israel itself. Nothing is probably going to change, neither from the government or the opposition, even if Netanyahu government leaves. I mean, it's a question of time, but even a more moderate Israeli Palestinian, to this day, I have yet to see one Israeli leader speak openly without concern. There must be a Palestinian state in order to end this considered conflict. Even Lapid is not saying that in a clear voice. No one is actually saying it because they are afraid. They're afraid even to talk about it. So from Israel itself, the prospect is limited. From the international community, it's hardly when we see. Not only they are not saying anything, they are actually being complicit to what's happening. And then, because you said the passivity of the Palestinian Authority. As a matter, not only passive, they're actually even supportive under the pretension, the pretending that they are doing so in order to demonstrate they are for peace and security and all of that. And so that is really leaving us with what you are saying, a matter of when will there be an explosion. That is the Palestinian people in the West Bank and perhaps joined by Gaza as well, to say, we are not going to take it anymore. And since they are being treated, dehumanized, and being killed day in and day out, they might as well uprise. It could be spontaneous, and the whole thing will explode. I wanted to continue with this scenario with you. Suppose this is going to happen. Suppose that's going to happen. Can you imagine what would be the possibilities if that is going to happen? When might that happen? Is there any views on your part? I mean, where is the tipping point? What's it going to take? Is there a measurement we can say in a year or two if this continues, it's going to explode? When that might happen? Because my fear is this, that if things don't change in a year or two or three, it may very well be too late. And by the time this administration ends, Trump goes, it's more than 3 years to go. 3 years of the same thing could make the situation so much worse in the West Bank that it conceivably becomes too late. How do you assess that from your perspective?
Well, let me first remind you of what they were talking about Gaza during the war and the last months of the war, and what was called the Trump-Rivera plan in Gaza Strip. And they were talking about the expulsion of 2 million people from Gaza to other countries, and even officially, Israel started contacting different countries to convince them to accept Gazans to go to these countries. And there were Israelis who said that this should happen also in the West Bank and should expel the Palestinians from the West Bank. And there is, as you know, I'm sure you know about the Smotrich plan of 217. And according to Smotrich's plan, which he announced in 2017, he said that the Palestinians in the West Bank have three choices. Either they leave the West Bank, and they must leave the West Bank and go anywhere. Those who doesn't want to leave the West Bank can choose between two things. Either to accept to be slaves for the Jews, and clearly say we accept to be slaves or the Jews, or to be killed. This is existing in the thinking of the average Palestinian in the West Bank. The average Palestinian in the West Bank, he is afraid that the policy of expelling the Gazans outside Gaza Strip to other countries and the possibility of applying this policy in the West Bank is on the agenda. So they are afraid. They don't want to be expelled. And therefore, this may also cause the delay of any explosion outside. But if you put a cat in the corner, it becomes a lion. Mm-hmm. They are pushing us all the time to the corner. And with the increase of number of settlers in the West Bank and the increase of their terror against the Palestinians, there will be a day when there will be a kind of a war, real war between the settlers and the Palestinians. But if this kind of war happens, it will be imbalanced, because the settlers will have the protection and the support of the Israeli army, and the Palestinians have no one to help them or to support them. So if you think about it from all directions, it's very complicated, it's very sad, and it's leading to a very unpleasant results.
Let me take this point, because you mentioned, if there were to be an uprising, that's fine. Then they're going to be the Israeli public against the settlers. The settlers will be supported, obviously, by the military and Israeli government. And what we have seen in Gaza is very clear, that this government is ready, willing, and able to crush the Palestinian in the broad daylight, killing 70,000 in Gaza, over 100,000 injured, leveling all of Gaza. So if suppose, can you imagine, and that is without a Palestinian uprising. Imagine that they'll do so in the West Bank. What would stop Israel?
There are Israelis who are waiting for any excuse in the West Bank to give them the reason to do in the West Bank exactly what they did in Gaza Strip.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. That's what I want to elaborate on this point.
To destroy villages, to destroy towns, to kill tens of thousands of the Palestinians in the West Bank and to force the Palestinians to run away to Jordan.
Okay, but let's
This is the
develop. I
dream.
want to
This is
develop
the
this
dream
point
of
with
many
you,
Israelis.
Ziad. I want to develop this point with you because here, basically, the contradiction we're talking about. When you say, if you corner a cat, eventually there's going to be an explosion. Then we are saying when there is an explosion, which some Israeli would like to see happen, because that will give them the excuse to crush the Palestinian. And we know the Israelis are capable of doing just that, as they have done in Gaza. All right.
And they have the silence of the international community
And they
and
have
the
the silence of the
complicity
international
of the
community.
United
What
States.
does that mean then? Then what is the prospect of there's going to be an explosion? Because in the
Well,
Palestinian,
listen. We may exaggerate when we speak about an explosion. They may use any accident to do what they want to do in the West Bank as they did in Gaza. They will not wait for a massive, big explosion of Palestinians in the West Bank against Israel. They are waiting for any opportunity to do what they did in Gaza.
oh, okay, but that's my point. If that's what they're waiting for, there's an opportunity. The Palestinian in Gaza, even though they know that if they do something of this nature, they're giving the Israelis the excuse to do what they have done in Gaza. That's my point here. That's my point.
Therefore,
What I'm trying to say is, which means that reduce the prospect of the Palestinian doing something significant, because that will give the Israelis the excuse. I'm trying to focus on this point because it's very important. If there is the concern that they'll be crushed in the West Bank if they rise, that is going to stifle the possibility of them being rising, because not to give the Israelis the excuse. That's what because I want to lead this to a point where, so if you have that is possibility, they may not do so because afraid. They don't want to give the Israelis the excuse. Then you don't have the international Semitic support. You have the complicity of the American administration. You have no opposition, and you have no Israeli public pressure. Now I want to know, where do we go from here? That's what I'm trying to get to the point.
let me say something.
Please.
We are the Palestinians. We are not living in a planet in the sky. We are living in this world.
Yes.
And don't forget that 70% of Jordan population are Palestinians.
Yes.
Don't forget that there are Palestinians everywhere in the surrounding countries around us.
Exactly.
If what happened in Gaza happened in the West Bank, this will destabilize not only Jordan. And if people think about stability and security on a regional level, they must understand that the main reason for instability in the region is Israel policy. What Israel is doing in Gaza and what they may do in the West Bank and what these fanatics will do in the holy places in Jerusalem, it will have its repercussions and its impact on the surrounding countries and also outside the region. So if something as what we were talking about, it happens in the West Bank, it will not stop within the limits of the West Bank.
That is exactly the point. That's why I wanted to come from you. I have been advocating. There are Palestinians in Israel proper, nearly 2 million. There are Palestinians in the West Bank, 3 million. There are, if not 70, at least 55, 60% Palestinian origin in Jordan, right? So together, there are more than 7 million Palestinians against basically 7 million Israelis. So absolutely, this is what the point, but that's why I wanted this to come from you. That is, if there is no solution, it is a question of time. Any kind of significant explosion, any kind, could mushroom into a complete regional instability, that is regional conflict, because Jordan cannot be excluded from entering the conflict in one form or another. King Hussein said that as much as he said, If there's going to be this kind of annexation of the West Bank, we will go to war, even we knowing we will lose the war, but we will go to war.
You mean King
I,
Abdullah?
King Abdullah, yes, that's what he said recently. I mean, a few months ago he said that. So that's why I wanted to see your perspective as well, because I agree with you 100%. That it is not going to be limited to the West Bank. It's going to be regional. Now it comes in, I want again your view on this point.
And also at the same time, I want to say another point, which I did not mention.
Please,
You
yes.
know, we are able to absorb the pressure, and we are able to live in poor conditions. We are not a prosperous society. And we can tolerate. The Israeli public, they cannot tolerate. And therefore, if you go to the Israeli statistics and see the number of Israelis who are started leaving Israel since the beginning of October, you will be surprised.
I agree with you.
If you look on the Israeli economics, and imagine that in some specific moment, there will be a halt of aid coming to Israel from the United States and from other countries, then you should think about what will happen to the Israeli economics. Israelis cannot live in the poor or bad conditions our people are living. We have some people who spend the day, they eat a piece of bread a day. Yeah. The Israelis cannot live as that.
This is very important.
Very spoiled society. The Israelis are very spoiled society.
It's a very important point that you are making. I want to emphasize the point you're making first before we continue, because this is an extremely important point that you are making. That is the Palestinian, and we know that historically they can sustain, they'll be prepared to absorb more pain, more agony, more losses. The Israelis do not have that capacity because the economy is deteriorating. And you are absolutely right. I looked at the figures. Last year, in 2024, 80,000 Israelis left Israel. The year before, 42,000 left Israel. Against that, only 38 or 30,009 immigrated to Israel. The prospect of American Jews, which is the largest Jewish community in the world, to go to immigrate to Israel, as they have been doing over the years, is practically non-existent. I mean, few are going, but because the growing majority of Jewish and of U.S. Jews are very disgusted of what Israel has done in the West Bank. Very much. I'm not talking about the organization like AIPAC and all of that. AIPAC, no matter what Israel is doing, it's fine. There's no problem. But the American Jews, as such, by and large, especially the young under the age of 40, 45, are disgusted, are revolted about what's happening in Israel. So your point is very well taken.
This is also a point that you have to think about it, the point of the change which is happening now in America, and with the young generation, with the people who are fed up with what Israel is doing. Exactly. With the people who watch on the TV, the Israeli Palestinian children in Gaza killed, suffering, seeing them. This impact on the public opinion will, at the end of the day, has its impact on those who make the decisions and will force them to change their direction. So it's a long-term process. But at the end, if the Israeli government and those who have the decision, Israel, continue going in the direction of what they are doing, they will lead to the end of their country. Meaning? If you think about it, Israel cannot continue to exist if they continue to do what they are doing now.
Well, again, there are many countries becoming a basically dictatorship with a mighty military power.
It's not a dictator government.
It's already. It's a
racist society.
Yeah, and it has become. I agree with you. It has become already a pariah state.
They give no value to the life of the other. They value only the life of a Jew, but the life of a non-Jew worth nothing.
No, I'm in agreement. I just want you to elaborate on this. When you say that Israel cannot exist, what I'm saying is, can you try to
As it is now, cannot
as
exist
it
as
is
it is
now?
now.
Well, I mean, now it's not, Israel is not a democracy as far as I'm concerned. Israel is moving toward dictatorship, if it's not already. It's one of the most powerful militarily in the Middle East, bar none, even if you include Turkey for that matter. And then Israel has become already a pariah state, and it could survive as a pariah state. So when you say the end of Israel, I just want you to elaborate on that.
No,
How do you see that?
Let me just elaborate on this point.
Yes, that I want you to.
It will be the end of Israel of today, of the form of today.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, we have to realize and to understand that the Israeli people are a reality here, and the Palestinian people are a reality. And we should come to the conclusion that it is our joint interest, Arabs and Jews, to join the ranks and fight against racism and against extremism.
Right.
And we may, at the end of the day, we may end with one state, with a democratic state, because what's happening now, it's against any conscience, any human value. And there are Israelis, when they know what's happening, they are against it. So when I say that Israel will not continue to exist, I mean that this kind of form
I understand. I just
not
want
exist.
our listeners to understand.
The Israelis are the allies of the Palestinians, that they both should fight together for human dignity, for peace to all of them.
So let us just focus
Against
there.
ethnic cleansing and against racism.
Let me ask you this now. Let's focus on the steps. We already talked about the conditions that exist today. You already spoke wisely about the fact that the Palestinians can take more beating, but there's going to be a point of time where there's going to be some kind of a explosion. It's going to create a regional instability. I'm fully agree. I'm along with this line. Maybe it can happen. Now, how do you see and let's just also assume, of course, there's going to be an election in Israel next year. Based on everything we're seeing, the likelihood that Netanyahu will not be his Likud will not have a majority to form a new government if things remain the way, and then most likely that's going to be the case. And let's assume there is a new Israeli government, but the new Israeli government, I have, like we said before, if Naftali Bennett or Lapid or whoever, they're still not looking for a solution, real long-term solution. And your point is, of course, very well taken. The Israelis exist, the Palestinians exist. There's got to be people with reason, with logic to say, the Palestinians are not going to go anywhere. The Israelis are not going to go anywhere. The only solution is to find a peaceful solution where coexistence is the only practical solution. And whether you are mentioning one state, I have a very serious reservation about that. To me, still a two independent state that fully collaborate on just about every level, economically, military, security, and all of that. That is the only, in my view, the only real possibility. Because the one state, if it's democratic, Israeli public will not go for that, because from their perspective, the Palestinian will sooner or later be a majority. So a democracy of one state will not sit well with the Israelis at all. But I still go back, and because that's what I've been preaching for the last 40 years, 35 years. The only practical solution. It's a two-state. There'll be negotiation about the future of Jerusalem, about the settlements, about the refugees. These issues can be resolved if there is the will, to coexist peacefully. I just want to raise to you another question because it's very important. 80% of Israelis, 80%, were born after 1967, which means for them, the occupation is almost like a normal phenomenon. They don't even pay attention, many of them. 90% of all Palestinians were born after 1967. So what we are seeing here, it's a really an amazing phenomena. That is, the majority of both population, vast majority, have lived with the current situation the way it is today. From a psychological perspective, do you see that as an impediment that is along the line of you and I are thinking about, that is potentially of a two-state solution? Do you see that as an impediment, or do you see that as an advantage?
Well, I want to speak about the two-state solution and the one-state solution.
Please.
I was one of those who advocated the two-state solution from the beginning of the 70s when the PLO were against it.
Yes.
And I was attacked in the media, and I was described as Hassan Sartawi of the occupied territories.
Right.
And Hassan Sartawi was assassinated by Abu Nidal group because they thought that he is moderate. But now, with the settlements in the West Bank, with the increasing number of settlers in the West Bank, there is no room for the Palestinian state. If you look geographically, there's no place to have a Palestinian state. And if you add to this thing the fact that you just mentioned, that 80% of the Israelis were born after 67, and they don't know Israel with the borders of 67. They know Israel with the borders of the River Jordan. And 80 or 90% of the Palestinians were born after 67, and they don't know that this area was part of Jordan before 67. This is another factor which makes us think that the two-state solution is not realistic anymore. It's not possible. It's not achievable. Then the question is, are we talking about a one-state democratic state for all its citizens? The answer is very simple, no. Why no? Because the Jews want to protect their Jewish identity, their Jewish culture, their Jewish religion, their Jewish speciality, and they don't want to, again, to become as citizens in a state like any other people.
Mm-hmm.
And the Palestinians would have the same feeling. So we should think out of the box how to find a formula of two entities living together, side by side, in some cases mixed together, but each one who belongs to any of these two entities continue to belong to his entity. A Jew continue to belong to the Jewish entity, a Palestinian Arab belongs to the Palestinian entity, and we should find a way how each one of them will run his own religious, cultural, education, social life, but living at the same time under the same umbrella. Now call that umbrella a federation, call it a confederation, call it one state, call it whatever you want. We need some experts, genius experts in constitutional law, who should study the experiences of other peoples, like Belgium, for example, and see, or Switzerland, and see how different ethnic groups can live together without fighting together. And this is a challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge. I want to tell you that I am 100% in agreement with you. We have been seeing the same, you and I, pretty much the same way. I have been advocating for some time now the creation of confederation. And that confederation is basically the Palestinian continue to live where they live, the Israeli can continue to live where they live, so distinguish between citizenship and nationality. Palestinians can vote and be elected in a Palestinian entity. Israelis, we both are elected in a Palestinian Israeli entity. They are mingled because They are mingled today, and there is no way on this planet you can separate them. It's not going to happen. So
I
the
don't
only
know if there
way,
is any way of having a confederation between two peoples, not two geographic areas. You know,
exactly. And
the,
I mean, you and I see this exactly the same way. And I've been writing about it extensively. As a matter of fact, I just added one other element. I just want to take your opinion on this. I published it, but I want to bring it back to life, so to speak. And that is eventually this will include Jordan. That is, Jordan will be the natural partner for this kind of confederation, because Jordan has a Palestinian population, the majority. Jordan has a unique interest from a religious dimension as the custodian of the holy shrines in Jerusalem. Jerusalem has 350 kilometers border with Israel, alongside us with the Palestinian. So the Jordan is a pretty much integral part of this whole entity, Palestinian, Israel, and Jordan. So I'm feeling exactly how you. The first part is an Israeli-Palestinian conflict under one umbrella, but different kind of ruling. Each rule their own. Each rule have their own government on their own, and eventually leading to Israeli Palestinian Jordanian Confederation. I have bounced this up with many people. I was told that it is conceivable only after, however, Israel and Palestine reach some kind of an agreement. Then we will be
uh,
considering that possibility. I want to
yes,
hear your comment.
Mayor, I know some people when they watch us, I don't want them to think that we are living in utopia.
Of course not.
We must say it's nice to speak about the future scenarios and the future prospects, but we should not forget the tragedy which is taking place right now in Gaza Strip.
Well, of course.
The focus should always continue to be how to prevent Israel from resuming the war again in Gaza and killing more Palestinians in Gaza, how to find a way that the Israelis should withdraw from the 52% of Gaza Strip which they already occupy, how we find a way to help and rehabilitate the people of Gaza after 2 years of genocide war against them. This is the first priority, but we can think about the future, about beautiful scenarios for the future. But this always, Gaza should be in the front of our
No,
eyes
look, there's no
and should
question
not be
about it. I
missing.
mean, look, I am 100% in agreement. What I am saying is you cannot wait, however. I mean,
No,
this
no, 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 no. You can work. You can work
yeah,
on
rehabilitation of
parallel
Gaza
tracks.
is a priority, but in the same time, something has to be done in the West Bank to stop the Israelis from killing day in and day out the Palestinian, to stop the
Yes,
Israelis
yes.
from building more settlement. What I'm saying, while we rehabilitate Gaza, which is critical and immediate, in the same time, we have to stop the Israelis from ravaging the West Bank. That's what I'm
Exactly.
saying. So
Exactly. We can
that
work
has to
concurrently
be
on different
simultaneous,
tracks.
not one at a time. And we are in full agreement with that. I raised this question because I want your reaction to it, because we pretty much see eye to eye in just about everything we talked about. This is very, very important. But let me ask you sort of, I'd like you to summarize in a way uh, your vision. I know we spoke about a vision of sort, but let's see. How do you see this for the next 5 years? What would be the preconditions to achieve what you can envision to happen, say, in 5 years? Not in 50 years, just in 5 years. How do you see this evolve? Do you have a vision? What would it take to get to a point where we come closer to our vision of eventually Israeli-Palestinian coexistence in peace? Do you have a vision how that's gonna look like? What it's going to take?
It's very difficult.
Of course, I know.
Difficult. We are in an area where there are surprises which no one thought about it. So it's not a normal situation that you can make statistics and analyze things and come to a conclusion that so and so will happen after so and so. This is a different area and the what. So all the time there are surprise things. You know, in the beginning of May '67, no one thought that there will be a war between Israel and Egypt, and there will be the '67 war. And within a month's time, things developed and changed, and the whole situation was changed. In '87, before the first Intifada, no one expected that there would be an Intifada. There were Israelis who were saying that the Palestinians are happy and they care only about their economic situation, and they are working in Israel and they are making money and everything is quiet. And all of a sudden, a car accident in Jabalia made the big explosion, and we witnessed the first Intifada, which continued years. What I envisage for the next 5 years, I can say that the Palestinians will remain here, and the Trump plan will fail, and there will be a positive change in our situation for the benefit of Israelis and Palestinians. I look forward to the Israeli elections, and I hope that the Arabs who are citizens of Israel will be able to run to the elections in one list. And if they run to the elections in one list and get 20 seats, for example, in the Israeli Knesset, they will make a block in front of anyone to form a government in Israel without taking the Arabs in consideration. And they will contribute to having a democratic government in Israel, a less fanatic or maybe a moderate government, which will change the direction of events. So let's end with hope and with positive thinking, and we'll meet a year from now, hopefully.
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to hear from you. It's a vision, and I absolutely hope and pray that your vision will come to pass. I agree with you. The Trump plan in Gaza will collapse. There is no prospect of that. My concern is that what is going to happen, though, we really don't know, because as long as this government continues to exist in Israel, very little will change in Gaza, in my view, no matter what happens. As long as Netanyahu,
many things may happen. You don't forget Lebanon.
no, I mean, as long
What
as
may happen with
Netanyahu, as
Lebanon,
long as
what may happen
Netanyahu
with
government is in
Iran.
power, no, but as long as Netanyahu government is in power, they will continue to put the blocks.
Yes, but listen, you are a professor, you know history much better than me. There was no country which reached the peak of its power and continued to be on that peak. They go up, and at a specific point, they will start going down. This is the logic of history. And you know, there are many options opened. Many different scenarios are open.
No, I'm not.
I would opt to a positive scenario.
No, I mean, that's why I asked you the question, your vision, and you have clarified. You have said something very interesting for our audience to listen to, and that is you see a new election, you see the possibility, you hope for the Palestinian and Israel will go and agree between themselves and have one list, hopefully win maybe 20 seats in the Israeli parliament, so they have a power when it comes to establishing a new coalition in Israel. You hope that the new government, perhaps, if not centrist government, who will be more considerate and more
And I hope
realistic,
for a change in the US itself.
and of course a new government in Israel itself. These are the things that you are hoping for, and I'm hoping exactly for the same thing. I really do, absolutely. And you also, of course, you have reservation in terms of who knows what's going to happen, because things many times just happen without anyone could foresee that is from happening.
Exactly.
But I am, like you said, as a political scientist, I look at the reality today the way you and I look at it, and I try to envision a solution. That's what I'm trying to do for the last 40 years. Envision a solution. And I still came to the same, pretty much to the same conclusion that you have, that you have. That is, the Palestinian are reality on the ground, and no Israeli can change. They can harass, they can kill. And my last article, how many Palestinians can you kill? How many Palestinians can you displace? How many houses can you destroy? Still, that is not going to be moving, push the Palestinian out of Palestine. It won't happen.
And just a final point. They say
Yes.
about ending Hamas. Now, suppose that they could end Hamas. Would the Palestinians sit quiet? The Palestinians, a new Hamas will be born within the Palestinians.
I agree.
Which will not be Hamas. It will be another kind, another organization, another movement. We will never give up. If they destroy Hamas, and they had already destroyed 70% of Hamas, and they may destroy all Hamas, but always there will be a new thing coming out as long as the Palestinians are not having their national right and their sovereignty and independence and self-determination. You cannot conquer a people. You cannot conquer a will of a people that they want to be free and independent. You can destroy any movement, but there will be another movement replacing that movement, more extreme of the first one and more violent of the first one, until they achieve their goal. So why should we go along this long suffering track? Why shouldn't we now try to settle this conflict and end this conflict?
I think this is the best way to have the end of this conversation. For now, with your last word, I want people to remember what you have said in your last summation. This is extremely important. We can continue this for hours to go, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time.
You're welcome.
I wanted people to hear your viewpoint, and I think you have made many very important points loud and clear, very loud and clear. And inshallah, we build on it. God willing, we build on it and move toward one day to that kind of solution that you have envisioned. God willing, God willing. Again, thank you so much, Ziad, for taking the time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And hopefully we'll do this again. When we can be more positive about everything. Thank you again. Thank you for listening to this episode on the issues. You can find this podcast on my SoundCloud page, and stay tuned to my social media accounts for the latest analysis and announcements.